Now let's talk about referencing style attributes. Referencing style attributes is similar to how you would reference a string attribute or any other attribute that we have discussed up till now. The only difference is that instead of the at symbol, you have to use a question mark here. And for example, they wanted to reference a text color secondary from the styles that were available, which were kept inside the values folder here, right? So you need to use a question mark there and not a at sign, and once you do that, you'll be able to reference the relevant attribute. Accessing the original files, so in some cases you might not want to save your images or your any resource that you're going to use in your values folder, or sorry, in your res resource folder, because that won't work for you. And you will see that this will happen when you do advanced level of Android development. For example, if you want to play some music which you want to store in your app, right? In that case, resource won't work for you. You will have to use the assets directory. So you can use the assets directory. You have to create a directory, new directory here under the resource folder, sorry, not under the resource folder, here under the app folder, and in this app folder you will be able to use the assets. So you have now seen, up till now you have seen that how to use different files and reference different files which are available. Now we also need to discuss the accessing the platform resources. So what does this really mean? This means that there are a lot of resources which are ready-made available in Android, and you don't really need to create those resources and store them in any of the folders, these are already there in the Android Kitty, right? So for example, there is a simple list item. Let's say tomorrow you're creating an Android app which requires a list to be displayed, and for every item that is being displayed you want some kind of layout, because you will require a layout, right? So instead of creating a layout, you can create a layout if you want to, but there are predefined ready-made layouts also available in Android. If you want to do that, you will be able to do that using this nomenclature android.r. So it stays the same. The only difference is that you have to put android.r, right? Now as we are going forward, you will keep seeing a lot of information or a lot of code that might look little you might not understand this, but not to worry, we will cover these things as we go ahead. So these adapters, these are basically classes and methods that have been designed to create lists in Android. So not to worry if you don't understand what this is all about. We will cover it up as we go ahead through this entire talk, right? Now let's talk about providing the best device compatibility with the resources. Now you got to understand one thing, that just because you are providing all the resources which are required to run your app in different localities, that does not mean that your responsibility is done, right? For example, if your app supports several languages, always include a values directory in which your strings are saved without a language and region qualifier. So what they intend to say here is that even if you are very well prepared to serve all the localities that are going to use your app, still it is advisable, strongly advisable, that you put all the files or all the resources in the values directory, and these act as default values, right? So these default values are required because in case somebody opens up your app at a location where the localities you have not covered, in that case your app will not crash. Otherwise it will definitely crash, right? And that definitely does not give a good impression on your user. So somebody, if they are using your app in France and they decide to move to some other country, and they could be one of the most important users that you have, and once you move to another locality which you had not covered earlier or which you don't have covered in your app, in that case the app will crash. Now another thing is, even if it will not crash, but the user will not see the language, they might not understand the language that they were expecting to see, right? In that case, even still, it's better than crashing, right? So never mind, it's always good to have an app which does not crash than an app that crashes. Similarly, in case of different layouts, if you have two portrait and landscape layout that you have decided for your app, do make sure that you declare one of the layouts as default layouts so that it doesn't crash in any case, right? Similarly, for everything, you might have scenario wherein you want to make sure that the Android device which is running your app has to have a minimum SDK version of 4 or greater, right? In such cases also make sure that you have default mentioned in your provided in your app so that the app does not crash. Now they have provided us with a small flow chart, which I don't find very important. This basically tells us how does Android figure out which resources to use for which locales. It's a very simple flow chart. It just goes through the entire it basically matches the locality. This is the locality of the user, and local parameters are here, and this is what you have provided in your apps, right? So it goes through this flow chart and tries to figure out which ones are the ones that which parameters or which resources are to be utilized for this particular app. So that's it. This brings us to the end of overview. Now in our next video we will talk about handling the configuration changes.